Today I'm going to teach you how to make these beautiful pillows on your embroidery machine. It's a pillow slip. You purchase ready-made inner pillows from your local fabric store. They come in various sizes. This specific one is a 360 by 360 millimeters or 14 by 14 inch pillow. And I'm going to teach you how to make a slip for it today. First of all, let's get our fabric that we're going to need. I'm using scuba fabric for the quilting, as it gives a beautiful loft. I like how it pops up and the embroidery looks very beautiful on the quilted background. Scuba is not deep diving fabric, it's a dress fabric. This is also scuba, it's a printed scuba. It stretches in all four directions. It's a soft, rather thickish type of fabric. You get it in beautiful prints, you get it in plain colors. I like to use white with the embroidery on. You also get it in various embossing looks that can really add dimension to your project. This one is a very deep emboss effect, as you can see, which we will use in future projects. So first of all, let's get everything we're going to need for this project. You're going to need a square piece of fabric the size of your pillow, or rather a little bit larger. I've cut mine 400 by 400, although my pillow is going to be a 360 by 360. If you're going to do the 4 by 4 hoop sizes, I recommend that you cut it a little bit larger, as you're going to do multiple hooping in various blocks, as you see are marked out here. So you're going to need that in your scuba fabric. This has the nice stretch. You can use cotton for the top if you want. Everybody's curious about scuba, that's why I'm using it in this video. You're also going to need some trims for your around your pillow. This is really personal preference. Some like it without, some like with the detail, so it really depends on what you want to do. The method I use, I cut two different contrast fabrics, one a little bit narrower than the other one, as you can see here. I fold them in half. Of course, I make long strips, which I will join diagonally. So you're going to place your fabric right sides together, and then you're going to stitch diagonally across. After stitching, you're going to trim away that extra corner. Fold it over, iron nice and flat, and then you can iron it closed. So you've got two closed ones. Then you join them. From the top, you start on your regular sewing machine. Place the small one on top of the larger one. Start stitching, and every now and again just fold and stitch, fold and stitch, fold and stitch till you get a beautiful trim. These are trims that I've already done. As you can see, you can use different fabrics. You can use ready-made lace on top, or you can even add more than one layer of fabric with lace in between, like this white sample where I've got satin fabric at the back, then I've got my lace, and then I've got a different contrast fabric on top. You will make your lace roughly 1.5 times the circumference of your pillow. You will notice that I did add some cording around my pillow. This is ready-made bought cording that I just purchased, but you can make your own piping or trims as well, like you can see here that I made for the green pillow. That's very easy to do. Just cut your fabric. Of course, it will be the length of the strip you're going to need. Then you purchase a soft woolly cord that you're going to insert inside, and then use your zipper foot to stitch right along the edge, so that you have a closed cording like this. which you can use then as a trim on the side of your pillow. So now that we have our trim ready, we have our edging ready, we have the front fabric, we still need the back fabric. For the back I use normal cotton fabric. This is percale cotton, 100% cotton, so it's quite a nice cotton to work with. I'm going to cut two pieces. One piece is the same size as my front fabric, which I'm going to fold in half. The other piece is a little bit longer, so that when we put it on the back of your pillow, that you have this overlap, as you can see here, that becomes a fold. You can later on add a button here if you want to, or you can make it a little bit longer. This is quite a thick pillow that I've got in here, so it looks like this is a little bit short, but yes. So that's what you're going to do here. That's your backs that we're going to use later on. So you can get all your fabric, your trims ready, and your front fabric, and then we can get started. We're going to use cutaway fabric for the pillow. The cutaway I'm using is about an 80-85 gram cutaway. It's not the very thin one, but it's also not the very thick one, and it's quite soft, which makes it perfect for these pillows, as you want a smooth look all over. You don't want it to be hard or bulky in any way. Hoop your stabilizer quite firmly, just a proper way. Make sure it's quite smooth and firmly in place. I've hooped my very big hoop, which is a 9.5 by 14 inch that we're going to do the sample on today, just for time's sake. If we're going to use the 4-inch hoop for this video, the video is going to end up being very long, as we would need about 16 hoopings to make a 16 by 16 inch pillow, but I will show you in a bit. The method for the large hoop, small hoop, medium hoop is all exactly the same. There's no difference. I do recommend that you first of all print templates of your design. I will have a link for you in this video where you can download Wilcom True Sizer, which will enable you to not only resize your own designs to any size you would like, but also to print your templates on. I've purchased Penguin transparencies for inkjet printers, which I like to use, as you can see through the template, for perfect placement every time, as you can see here. You can print on paper if you want. It will be a little bit more difficult to line up because you can't see through it. You can also use vellum. Just make sure that you are able to print on a normal inkjet printer with it. If you've got a laser printer, that's not a problem. It will print on almost anything. If you purchase the transparency sheets, when you take it out, you will feel one side is rough. That's the side the ink will be on. You're going to place it with the rough side down if your printer prints that way. So just make sure that you put it the right side around, so the ink goes on the rough side and not on the smooth side. So you will print out your templates. This one, the very large hoop one, printed on 2 pages. There's registration marks on the side where you can line up your piece to make it the full block you're going to stitch. Right on the edge of the design, where I want the next design to start, I'm going to mark on the top and on the bottom, so I can draw a reference line for myself to know where the next design needs to be lined up. I'm just going to use a longer ruler, as my hoop is quite long, and I'm just going to draw in that line. So if we look at the template again, and we line it up with your center point of your template and your center point of your stabilizer, you will now have a line right on the edge of the design where the new design will be lined up when we do that one. On the 4x4 hoop, I'll just show you quickly, it's exactly the same. So no matter what hoop you use, it's going to be the same method you're going to do. Insert your template. Again, mark out your center. Remove your template and draw the lines so you can actually see them properly. So now we have the center of our hoop. We know what the center of our design is according to what we printed out. We're going to line it up. Make sure that the corner you are busy doing is the top left hand corner. So make sure your template is turned the right way. Place it down and then just make little marks using your ruler right on the edge. You know the next one we're going to do the right top one. So we're just going to mark out there, mark out on the bottom, and we're going to complete that line as well. So we already have our placement for our next looping done. So you can see from both these hoops, the markings look very similar, and we know that it will stitch in the correct place. We need to mark our fabric. On the 4x4 hoop type designs, if you want a 16 by 16 inch pillow, this is the size. It's the same size as this pillow. Just bear in mind, you're not going to sit with the exact same look as this. You're going to sit with 4 smaller designs. So what you can do then is take your little giraffe and stitch the little giraffe in each one, or a different giraffe in each one, and your text you can still add in the middle if you want to. You can, if you want, add the bigger picture in the center, but you will still end up with your quilting. The batting we're going to use, this is Quilter's batting. It's a thin batting, not very thick. The scuba already is a thick fabric, and because of the stretch, it will add maximum bounce to your design even if you use a thin batting like this. So first of all, take your batting. I use 505 spray, which is a temporary adhesive specifically for fabric, and I just spray lightly and adhere my fabric to the batting. This is not a permanent fix, it's just temporarily, just to keep it from slipping and sliding all over the show. If you feel the scuba is a little bit too soft to your liking, you may use a spray starch to give it a little bit less stretch. It won't affect the stitching, but it will be a bit more manageable for you. On your hoop, you have marked the center point and you have already marked the off-center line. We're now going to line up the center of your fabric with that off-center line that you drew on your stabilizer. You're going to make sure that it lines up perfectly there and that it also lines up on this side. You can, if you want, flip it over and just make sure that it lines up there as well. Now again, I use 505 spray just to help me keep it a little bit in place. Everything is loose on the hoop. It's not hooped with your stabilizer. You're only going to hoop your stabilizer and not your fabric. For added support, I'm just going to pin right on the edge where I know the design will not stitch. If you are unsure, just put your template on top and make sure that your pins are well out of the way from where the design is actually going to stitch. On the 4x4 hoop, the method is exactly the same. You already marked out your center point of your hoop and you already marked out where the edge of the design will be. If you look there, I already marked that line out. Again, you're going to do the exact same thing on the fabric, but remember now where we're going to stitch. We're going to do a quarter, then we're going to flip, do a quarter, another quarter, and another quarter. So just concentrate on the area you're actually going to stitch in. Which we're going to stitch in that area. I'm going to line up the edge of the design in this corner. Then I'm going to mark out the center point of this design. And as the crosshairs are marked on the fabric, I can then just draw them in using a ruler. Remember, we're just concentrating on the one corner for now because that is where we're going to stitch. Do not draw your lines through. We will line that up as soon as we're ready. You can make sure by placing your template again, making sure that the center lines correspond, making sure that it's right on the edge of the center of your whole project. You can now place your project in your hoop. Again, line up your center point with the center on your stabilizer. And make sure the top, left, bottom and right corresponds. When you're ready, use 505 spray to keep it in place. When using pins in the very small hoops, just please double check and make sure that you do have your pins well out of the way from where the design is going to stitch. And we're ready to start stitching. Let's move over to the embroidery machine and get started. On the 4x4 hoop, I've placed my hoop into the machine and I've loaded my 4x4 design. You can, when you start the design, it should go to the center of your hoop and it should line up perfectly with what you drew. If not, you can tweak either the fabric a little bit to make sure that it lines up with what it's going to stitch, or if you have the capability on your machine to actually move the design, you can do that as well. On my machine, I do have the capability of tracing and seeing exactly where the design is going to stitch. So I'm going to move it to the top and make sure that it is on the line. That should be in the center of the project, the left hand corner, top and right in the center. So everything should line up with your markings that you have on your fabric. Once you're ready and everything is lined up perfectly, you can start stitching. After you finish stitching the first corner, we are ready to do the next area. Turn your hoop and cut away this extra stabilizer you've got on the sides as close as possible to the stitching, but without cutting your stitching. Do not cut the batting or the front fabric. You are only going to cut away the extra stabilizer. This is just so that you don't add bulk to where the rest of the designs are going to stitch. You can smooth out your fabric, make sure everything is still nice and straight. Then we can hoop another fresh piece of cutaway and we're going to hoop the next area. You're going to again mark your center lines and you're again going to use your template exactly like previously. You're not going to turn your template, you're going to keep it with the top right hand corner because we're going to move our fabric. We are not going to move turn the design in the machine. So I'm going to just mark the edge where I want the next design to start. I'm going to remove this and draw this line. So it's the exact same step as previously, nothing different. Previously you had your fabric this way and we stitched in that corner. We want to stitch this corner now. So we're going to turn our fabric that way. And as you can see, when the design is in your hoop, it's going to stitch in the correct place where it should. So again, on your fabric, draw your center lines according to your template. If there was any movement in the hoop and you see your lines are not perfectly lining up anymore, I use a water-soluble pen, so I just use a brush and some water. And I will erase the line that I've drew previously. I will then take my template and line it up with where the design stitched, making sure it meets where the stitches stopped and started. I'm going to try and keep it on my horizontal line to make sure that it does line up perfectly. I'm then going to draw my crosshairs, and on this side it's lining up with this line, so it's fine there. I'm then going to draw and I'm going to add my horizontal. At this point I am going to use, because I feel it's not connected to my cutaway of my batting very securely, so I'm just going to add a little bit more 505 spray and make sure that it adheres properly. This is just to minimize any movement and stretch that might happen while the design is stitching. You can baste along your project if you really want to. It just depends if you do have a lot of movement in your hoop or not. Some of the machines, the machine foot is quite low, so it tends to push the fabric to one side. If that happens, you obviously need a little bit more 505 spray or need to baste your fabric to your batting to avoid that from happening. We're now sorry. We're now ready to line up the center points again. Remember, just to recap, the design is going to stitch in that region. Push a pin through and line up your centers. Making sure it's right and it's fine. I'm going to use 505 spray to secure it in the hoop. If you do get 505 spray on your hoop, the easiest way to clean it is with rubbing alcohol. It takes it off right away. You can soak using dishwash soap as well, but I found alcohol really does a good job and quite fast as well. Half of the block is completed, and as you can see, alignment is perfect. You can now continue with the same method, doing the other 2 quarters of the design to complete your block. After you finish the whole block, you will then stitch your design in the center of your block. Put your hoop into the machine and load your embroidery design onto the machine. It should automatically go to the center point, and it should line up perfectly with the lines you drew onto your fabric. You can use your template, place it down, and just make double sure that you do have everything perfectly lined up. If it needs a little bit of tweaking, you still have the chance to do so. With my embroidery machine, I have the capability of doing a trace of where the actual design will stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and move it to the right top hand corner, making sure that it meets all the lines, the reference points that we have in. If slightly off, like in that case, I'm just going to loosen my pin, and I'm just going to drag it a little bit. Remember, there's stretch in the fabric, so you need to line it up perhaps a little bit, just tweak it a little bit where necessary. Spot on, right on it. From the side, looks fine, and we are right in the center there. Super, looks perfect. So we are ready to start stitching. You can start the machine. To the last few stitches of the left side of our block. Now let's rehoop for the second half. Remove your hoop from your machine and remove the pins. You can remove the embroidery completely from the hoop and hoop a fresh piece of cutaway. You're going to mark your stabilizer again like we did in the first time we hooped our cutaway. So I'm going to mark the center. And I'm again going to mark the same spots I marked on my hoop the last time. You're now going to take the embroidery you have done and cut away the cutaway stabilizer as close to the edge as possible. I find the rotary cutter is easier to do this, but be careful not to cut your fabric. Looking from the back, you have half of your embroidery done. I'm just going to cut away this extra because If you do not cut it away, it's going to result in a thicker area and perhaps your stitch is not lining up like it should be. So try and cut away as much as possible of your cutaway that is going to overlap your new design. You can smooth out your fabric. We're not going to turn the design on your machine. We're just going to turn your fabric in your hoop. So the design is still going to stitch on the left hand side, same as when it did this side. Remember, first time we stitched, it stitched like this. We're just going to turn our fabric now and line up again these sides and on the center on that side. So the next design is going to stitch in that region. Once you feel you have the perfect placement, use your 505 spray to just assist keeping it in place. It feels like it's still going. Again, secure with your pins. Use your template if necessary to make sure that your pins are well away from where the design will stitch. Take the design back to your embroidery machine and let's start stitching the rest of the block. Most machines can do a trace to see what the perimeters is of where you're going to stitch. So I'm going to do the trace to see how close it's lining up to the already stitched design. Taking it to the right hand top corner. Looks perfectly spot on. Taking it to the middle. If it needs adjusting, you can slightly pull on the fabric and just pin it down in place where you feel it needs that little bit of extra security. Gonna take it to the bottom. Looks fine. I think that's as close as I'm probably gonna get. During this outline stitch, you should be able to confirm that your alignment is spot on. If not, you can take it back and readjust. You would, however, need to pull out the threads there. So I'm just going to stop it quickly after it and just make sure it's right at the top and right at the bottom, and to me it looks perfect. So I'm just going to continue stitching. We'll be back after the design completed stitching so that we can add the giraffe in the center of the design. That's going to be another hooping. As you can see, we're all done stitching. Alignment is perfect. You can remove it from the hoop now. I'm going to turn the wrong way facing me, and this extra flap of stabilizer I'm just going to cut away. Careful not to cut the embroidery. And we're ready to add the design in the middle. Mark the center of your hoop directly onto your stabilizer. As the center of your block is still marked and the center of your stabilizer is marked, simply line up the two centers. I just put a pin through. When it sticks out the back, I can place it on that marker and then push it down. Making sure when you turn it, the bottom lines up and the sides, the top. You can then use 505 spray. Press down. You can, if you want, add extra pins. I don't think it's necessary though. It feels quite sturdy in the hoop. So I'm just going to take it to the machine now, and we're going to stitch the giraffe design in the center. With all embroidery now completed, let's start assembling our pillow. Embroidery is complete, so let's remove it from the hoop. Using your rotary cutter, cut about 1/4 inch from the nearest stitches you see on the edge. Trim away all 4 sides. The piping you made earlier, you can now stitch to the edge of your block. Place it down and stitch 1/4 inch from the side all around. When you're done stitching your piping to your block, you can start attaching or pinning your frill to your block, which we will then stitch in place. When you come to the end, cut the extra off, but make sure you overlap quite a bit, because you're going to fold it twice again over each other. And pin it down. With our frill and piping now in place, it's time to add the back fabric. With your fold towards the middle, add the one piece and pin it in place. I like to use the quick clips. They hold very nicely and goes a lot faster. Now take the other half, again with the fold towards the center. It will overlap in the middle. Start at the corners again. You will now straight stitch 1/4 inch all around. Make sure you clip the corners, or you can stitch the corners round after it's done.